Hello, and welcome to the Beyond Screens Alternative Controller Show. My name is Alistair, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Tatiana.
Hello. In this show, we invite creators of Alt+Ctrl video games to tell us about their work and show us what they are working on.
So, for those of you who might be new to the world of Alt+Ctrl, these are video games designed to be played using unusual custom-made controllers. For example, a game could be controlled using a door stopper, or maybe an electric guitar, or perhaps even a paper shredder. Or the creator might build a totally new object by soldering together their own electronic components.
And today's guest is Amanda Hudgins. Amanda is based out in Lexington, Kentucky. They're an alternative controller designer, but also a writer, an editor, a photographer, a videographer, many things. And before we welcome Amanda to the stream, let's take a look at one of their projects to give you a feel of their work. This is a fighting game titled Sentence Table.
So, let's welcome to the stream, Amanda Hudgins.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Good to see you all.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming along.
Thanks for joining us.
So
Should we start?
Yeah,
sounds
sure.
good. Where should we begin?
Alistair, sorry. Yeah, shall we begin? Alistair, I interrupted you. Sorry. Go on,
I was going to ask. I was just going to ask quite a banal question about what's the weather like in Kentucky. So
that's important. The important question, Amanda. People want to know what's the weather in Kentucky.
Hot. But I work in a basement office, so I won't know for sure how hot it is, or even if it's raining until probably about 5 or 6 p.m.
So yeah, the weather is basically a ceiling right now.
Yes, the weather is
Okay.
a hospital cold.
Right.
So, well, you know the basics of the show. We will go through your career, what you've done. Well, just what you've done, actually, not what you haven't done. This doesn't make sense. And
we go into the
usually,
future.
yeah, and the future, what you will be doing. So, yeah, to start, so during, we did some research, obviously, on your profile, as we always do, and we basically saw that you had 2 bachelors of art, focusing on, I will directly go to this, so in media arts and media studies in general, and this led you to have actually a professional career that you still have in writing. So with 2 sides, one more on social media marketing and one more on the journalist side. So what happened? How did you end up doing that?
Oh, that's easy. So my first degree is a degree in English literature from the University of Kentucky. So and I graduated in 2011, which in the US is major financial crisis happened basically the year I graduated. It happened, the first one happened the year I graduated high school, the second one happened the year I graduated college. So I graduated very quickly with a degree in English literature, exited, found out I could not get a job. So I was not employable. I applied to a bunch of graduate programs. I didn't get into any of them. I applied to a bunch of jobs. I didn't get any of them. I was told I wasn't qualified enough. I remember one specifically. I wasn't qualified enough to be a secretary answering phones.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a really It was not great.
Mm.
I sold children's shoes for a little bit. And then after that, around the same time, I picked up a bunch of freelance Craigslist ads
Okay.
for mostly random stuff, but one of those things was social media. And I started
Mm.
working for a guy who was very, very positive that he could sell real estate by connecting it to collegiate sports.
Interesting.
Okay.
This has never worked. This will never work. He paid me for 2 years to do this.
Right.
Anyway, you got paid,
Yeah.
so
I got paid.
whatever.
Listen, if he wanted to make 14 NCAA collegiate fan sites to route real estate leads, again, it didn't make any sense to me, and I did it for 2 years. And so after that, I went back to school because clearly that wasn't working.
Mm.
And I got a degree in, as you said, media arts and studies, which is it's a telecom degree, technically is what it used to be called, but I tell people that they taught us how to do everything from running an AM radio tower to building a website. It's a very
Okay.
broad degree. One of the reasons I picked it was that it was a very job-focused degree. Like a bunch of our instructors were in the fields that they were teaching us about. And I got that degree. And around somewhere in there, I started also making video games.
Okay, so
Bounced
you
around a
started
lot.
video games during your media studies.
I started video games during my media arts and studies. I went to, I can never remember what year it was, but it's somewhere in there. There was a Ludum Dare, not Ludum Dare, there was a global game jam about a heartbeat. And
Right.
that is,
Okay.
I made the theme was literally just the sound of a heartbeat. And that is the very first year I made a game, was for that.
Okay.
Right. What was the game?
Oh, it was a series of interconnected HTML web pages about a robot that gains a heart. It was a story game. I made the whole thing. It was really complicated for me because I was just getting started into like CSS. I showed it and someone was like, "Oh, did you make that in Twine?" And that's when I found out Twine existed.
Right.
I made a Twine game without Twine, which was great, but not, yeah. So then I started making, my earliest games were all interactive fiction. So that ties in really well with my English literature background and writing
Yeah.
story. So I did a bunch of stuff like that. I showed a game at PAX like literally a year or two later, which is wild in retrospect.
Yeah.
We were surprised that most of your early Alt+Ctrl games were not actually about narrative design. I literally told that to Alistair this afternoon, and but this makes sense. It's because you made video games, more traditional one, before going to Alt+Ctrl.
Yeah, so there's a major disconnect in my oeuvre, if you will. That's probably terrible to say that word. There's a major disconnect between these two periods in my career, because my very early stuff is all like, I used to joke that I make narrative games about oppression, because I did. Like I wrote like, oh, here's a game where it's about like someone getting their first period and they're on a train and it's the apocalypse. And like those are the kinds of games I was writing.
Yeah.
And then at some point I was like, or I could make a fighting game, which I have no background in. Zero background in, and it'll just be zero story, no story. Yeah,
but you had experience as a player.
No.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay, that's really surprising. Okay.
No, there's probably, oh, I don't know. I think that there's an old interview with there's this fighting game guy, his name's Wooly, and he introduced me. This is kind of skipping ahead a tiny bit, but so my first major alternative controller game that I made, not on my own, but like where I was the design lead on, is a Sententable, which is a 100 button fight stick.
Yeah.
And I love that game. I've taken that game everywhere. But one of the first shows I took that game to was MagFest. They've got a big fighting game contingent. I met this guy who was apparently really big in the fighting game scene. His name was Wooly. And he like stopped and talked to me, and he was like, "Oh, you must really love fighting games." And I was like, "I'm gonna be totally honest, I don't play them." So like I have nothing against them, but like my only thing was at one point I go to a lot of game shows. And so like I once placed third in a King of Fighters tournament.
Right.
It was the first time I had played King of Fighters.
Okay.
I sat down, like my background in fighting games is that of a teenager who wasn't allowed to play fighting. I wasn't allowed to play anything violent. All of my media was strictly regulated as a child. So I wasn't one of those kids who had Mortal Kombat, but I had cousins who had Mortal Kombat. So you would like go to their house and they would destroy you because you have no idea what's going on. You've never played this game before. Like that's my whole background in fighting games. I really like at the point in time in which I made Sentensible and then the interactive fiction games before that, I was making most of the games I played were indie platformers and roguelikes, games I've never made.
Interesting. So you're not the type of designer that makes games that they would like to play as a player.
Yeah, not really, no.
Okay,
I don't know why. It's never happened for me. I mean, I really liked interactive fiction, and that's one of the reasons I made interactive fiction. But the alternative controller games I play, the games that they're riffing on, are not games that I have nothing against them. I feel like you can't make a game about something that you don't have a bit of respect for. Like I've seen people jokingly be like, I'm going to make a social game that's like, you know, like this, and this, and then but they're describing it in a way where it's clear that they don't respect it and they don't like the game they're making. And I don't think you can do that, at least not well, not in my opinion. I think you have to respect some aspect of it.
Yeah,
obviously.
So I don't hate fighting games. I'm not like anti-fighting game. It's just it's a game about a level of it's a game that has a level of mastery that I personally cannot hit.
right.
It's like stealth games, right? I'm terrible at stealth games. I've played like 2 or 3 of them, and every time I open one up, I like immediately walk into a garden and die. Like I don't have that. I have the subtlety of a chainsaw. I'm not so like it's one of those things, but I feel like you have to respect the thing that you're either riffing on or engaging with. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, my games background is actually incredibly limited.
Okay, interesting. From our research, your first Alt+Ctrl game was Dream Bigger and Darling.
Yeah, I would say that's probably accurate. I mean, I worked for a company called Super Soul, and Super Soul released a game about a year before that. It was actually, and I think either the inaugural or the second year. I think the inaugural because it was the year that Robin showed
Line Wobbler?
Yeah. I don't know why I forgot Line Wobbler. It was like the year he showed Line Wobbler at Alt+Ctrl, GDC. So I think that's the first year. So the company I worked for, Super Soul, showed a game called Deluxe Turbo Racing 360.
Right.
And that is technically the first Alt+Ctrl game that I ever worked on. But like secondarily, I was more part of like showing it. Like the guy I worked with at the time, a guy named Richie Hoagland, he designed it. But I was just kind of there, like demoing it, helping like paint things, like that kind of level. And then after that, I made Dream of It Bigger, Darling, which was a very large piece for an art show. It was only shown at one night of an art show.
Right.
And that it's kind of an alternative control, but I couldn't tell you what the controls were because I didn't 100% understand them. It was supposed to be a distance sensor, but it reacted like like it was detecting sound. It was very weird.
Right.
It was supposed to respond to one type of input, and it seemed, I think I just wired it wrong. It was the first time I'd ever wired anything. So it didn't work the way I thought it was going to. And they showed it.
Yeah, maybe let's just explain quickly so people that are watching us can understand what we are talking about. So this is an interactive textile art piece, and participants they lie on a bed, and they can like cats kind of play with the textile and stuff will happen. It was a really shitty explanation, but it's just for people to get
No, it's
what
fine.
we're
It's
talking about.
actually
Okay.
the version you're describing is actually the second iteration. So the
Okay.
very first one was actually my first idea was I wanted to make this big thing, like a king-sized bed. But again, I never made anything really before like this. So I immediately found out that it was way more complicated than I thought it was. So I scaled it down. I believe it was 4 feet by 2 feet. Like the initial one was like really small. And then 2 years later, I built a version into a children's 4-poster bed.
Right.
But yeah, and that small one is in the big one.
Okay.
I
4 feet is actually 120 centimeters for our European fellows.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, me neither. I just checked it out. Obviously. Also, Alt+Ctrl GDC, the one with line wobbler, was the second one. It was 2015, and the first Alt+Ctrl GDC was 2014.
So it would have been the 2015 one because it was the year you showed line wobbler.
Right.
Okay. So second one, quite early actually.
Yeah.
And after that, you enjoyed doing Alt+Ctrl controllers, I assume. We can see that the first focus were about touching stuff with weird material, I mean textile. You had a game 2 years after that based on silicone this time. That is one funny game, I'd say, that we hesitated to show on Twitch, but we think it's okay. Hopefully Twitch is not that Puritan. So this game is called Kawaii Squish Penis Toy Controller. This is how it's mentioned on your website. It's the cutest controller, honestly, like just for people to know.
It's called Little D and his 5 buds.
The real name is that, but I really like the Kawaii Squish Penis Toy Controller.
that one was made for a self-care jam.
Right.
I think it was like the year self-care jam. I was like, oh, I want to make something silly and dumb that has like no purpose. And my then partner, he might have been my husband then, he made the game for it, and all it does is you push one of the 6 buttons, which all have tiny stress toys that are anatomically shaped. You depress one of those guys, and they're just sitting on top of buttons.
Right.
So they're glued to buttons. So you press one, and then it shoots off inside the game. There's a really great video of Jupiter Hadley playing it.
Right. And
she can't quite speak about a half, like 30 seconds into describing this game. Like she's because we didn't turn the limit. There's no limit on how fast they'll go, so they're just zipping around the screen.
Right.
There's just these little, it's a lot. It was a lot of fun to make. I still have that controller. It is a little gross because the material it's made out of attracts dirt like no other. But yeah, don't.
But there is something kind of fun that I think is really fun going on there, is taking something you because it was like, Stanois arcade buttons. So these are proper,
very nice.
Nice arcade buttons with a squishy penis on top of them. And there's something really nice about sort of taking something that is like, I don't know, to me that's very kind of this is the high-tech best button in the business, and going, and we have put something squishy and silly and fun on it, and now it changes the touch of how you, and it's the same parts with just something stuck on top of it. But I don't know, to me that really speaks to me. There's a lovely kind of like joy and silliness to that I really admire.
I mean, it's games are meant to be, I mean, they don't always have to be, obviously. Again, narrative games about oppression is my background, but games should and can be fun also. Like that should be an option. And for me, at least, like I'm big on the democratization of like games in terms of their construction and their implementation. Like you should be able to, there should be a certain amount of joy, and engagement in the product that you're making in terms of like games, but also in the sense that there's this gatekeepiness to a lot of games. Like you mentioned the Sanwa buttons. Like if you know anything about arcade buttons, Sanwa are like, you know, the next level. But if you're looking for one of the weird products of what I do is that I now have like opinions on buttons, but also not. Because people will ask you all the time, like you make one fight stick with 100 buttons in it. That's one thing. You make like 3, which I've made like a bunch now. And everyone's like, oh, what's the best button? And it's like, I have such terrible news for you. I have like, it really depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, you're right. Like the Sanwa buttons, they're the Featherlight touch. They feel like touching like a drum pad. They're gorgeous. DJ Tech Tools uses them on their MIDI fighters. They're lovely, lovely buttons. Yeah, I glued a cartoon dick on one.
I like this idea. Yeah, I mean, it's like you take something that is seen as the elite of brands, of button brands and arcade materials brands in general, and then you just glue some squishy stress toy stuff on it, and it turns satisfying. Just for people maybe to know, Sanwa, you can recognize them. It's not like it's just you're paying the brand. There is a feel attached to it. Yeah, they are lovely. But there's something super satisfying with the behavior. So I didn't play, obviously, with your controller, but it's really satisfying, at least to watch bounce. And I believe that the Sanwa button under it must play with this feel, this bounciness. That's quite satisfying to watch on video.
I describe them as they're almost like drum pads almost. They're very, very soft. They're very, very gentle. They respond to touch lovely. I don't personally use them on the Sententable project because for Sententable specifically, it's going for a sort of American arcade aesthetic, like 80s arcade visually. And you're looking for that's a Suzo Hap, or any of the frankly knockoffs of Suzo Haps that you can buy for way cheaper. But yeah, it's a Sanwa or Sumitsu, I think, is the Korean one that's also really popular. But if you've ever touched like a really nice arcade stick that someone's got, where they're like, I play fighting games and I play them seriously, they've probably got a Sanwa or something that looks like a Sanwa.
And that's you also used arcade materials for what I believe to be your most famous game. At least it's the first one I knew from your work. This was grammatically super incorrect, but anyway, you got it. Which is a Sententable, which started, so I'm not sure I got this correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it was first the 1000 button project, and then it turned into Sententable, right?
Yeah, so the original concept, which I got, I've established, or like I've kind of established already, I have this problem where I want to make these really big things, and then at some point very early on in the process, someone's like, you've never actually done anything with a button before. And it's like, correct. And it's like, so you want to put 1,000 of them into something, and it's like, yeah, that seems fine.
Okay.
The best thing for me, at least, is working from a place of complete ignorance, because I have no idea how what I'm doing is a bad idea. And so the original concept for what's now Sententable was that it was going to be a kind of a 2-mech setup. So there were going to be 1,000 total buttons, 500 per like fighter, and it was going to be very, very big. And my partner at the time was like, what if you build a smaller one? So I built one that was 16 buttons, and then I built the one that went on tour, which is 100 buttons. I've never 100% given up on the 1,000 button variant, but at this point, cost is actually the problem. But yeah, I had I'm a person who gets asked a lot of weird questions about like scale and size with relation to the projects I make. And so before this one happened, a friend of mine who goes by Mild Mojo on Twitter said something along the lines of like, how many USBs can you plug in at once? And we did like, it's like a math problem, and there's fun answers to it. And so that's where the 1,000 buttons originally came from, was like, how, and none of them are USB. So it's not a sensical question even in relation to this, but that's like the original germinated idea, was like, how many is like too many?
Yeah. I had questions like this when I saw the project for the first time, about also the number of inputs, actually, because everyone knows that there is a limitation of simultaneous input that you can get, and this depends on many things, including your keyboard, for example, how it's made, and the logical circuits in them. But even on the computer part, and even if they are not simultaneous, at some point you will have questions about how to get so many inputs, and so it raises many technical questions, actually, that goes way beyond, oh, it's funny, let's have lots of buttons.
Again,
it's
ignorant.
practical.
I have no idea why that would be. I had no idea then. I do now. Like, but like because like now it's like, oh, well, that was a terrible idea. Like, we had to do multiple boards to figure out which one would work. So it's running off of an Arduino 2650, which is actually running off two, because an Arduino 2650 is the Arduino that at the time I was making it, this is probably still the case, because I don't know why you'd need more. And I'm saying that an Arduino 2650 has the most individual connected ports on it.
Right.
So it has 54, I think.
Right.
It's been a hot minute.
I'm looking it up because I cannot give you the number, but it has a lot indeed. Yeah.
So it's surrounded by them. It's an Arduino Mega 2650. I have burned through so many of these boards. So many. They are the largest fail point on my machine. There are two of them. They are running on either side. One of them runs player 1, one of them runs player 2. At this point, when I go to a show, I just I flash the controller onto one of them, and just like have like 1 or 2 in my bag, because I think I go through more of those than buttons, because I don't really think they're designed to have someone hitting all of them at once.
Yeah.
And there's all these things I learned over the course of it. Like Jerry Bellich, who made Choose-a-Tron, I showed him my game once at a show, and he was looking at the underside, and I was explaining I had this problem where they keep like all my wires keep coming undone. And he's like, well, you're crimping them, right? And the answer to that question is no. I was not crimping them. I was not. I had 100. I had let's see, 200 total connections, just to the buttons on the back of the board, and there was 0 crimping happening for 2 years.
Right.
Okay. What are you doing? Soldering them?
No, I was just kind of, they kind of look like little. Shoot, I'm spacing on the names right now. I know what color they are. Again, I don't have a background in this. They're little red spade connectors.
Okay.
So I was just putting the wires into spade connectors, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
I don't even know how to crimp anything.
I didn't either. So I'm at GDC with the travel version of my board, and showing it to Jerry, who I've known in this industry for a while, and I'm showing it to him, and he's like, well, why didn't you crimp any of these? And I was like, great question. What's a crimper?
No, but that's, so yeah, for by the way, for the Arduino Mega, it's 54 binary inputs, but this doesn't count for the analog one, but it counts for some of them that I wouldn't recommend using anyway. Usually for just getting the input, we would use a keyboard encoder, because you would have much more plugs on them for a cost that is half of this, like iPac 4, stuff like this. But I get the whole point is to try new stuff. Like, I love that.
Yeah, we priced out an iPac. Sorry, didn't want to interrupt you, but we priced out iPacs and stuff like that, and it was just prohibitively expensive at the scale we were at, especially because we were looking for like especially at that point when we were pricing them out, we were still talking about doing 1,000. And like I talked to one of the guys who was like selling them, and he was like, "Why do you want that many?"
Yeah.
And it was just
because art.
I'm like, now I'm confident enough that I would have said something. At that point, again, I had no idea if I even needed that many. So I was like, that's a great question. And the Arduino 2650 is $12.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
makes sense. Yeah. No, but that's I think that's a I don't know if I can say educational. People learn, and we have kind of the same steps, except for those who had a background in something. Like what I see my students doing when I didn't have a chance to explain crimping. Usually they will solder directly on the buttons stuff, which makes sense. I mean, and it's working, so it's good enough. And it's always the same. Like, it's not like these people are talking together. So it's funny to see exactly the same process happening. And I think it's also happening because for many people doing Alt+Ctrl, the thrill is coming from discovering something new, else by hijacking a new technology, or just discovering it because it feels like trying to understand a magic trick, I guess, something like this. So it happens at any level. Like in my last game, I wanted to make some circuit bending, and I've never done that before. So with my partner, we just opened up some toys and tried to understand how all the circuits were working. And it's like pure made in China product. So of course, there are a lot of stuff happening that, like sometimes you just have something super simple, red and black wires that are inverted. So inputs will be black and the ground will be red because it's made in such a rush, in such a hurry. So this was part of the fun in it. And yeah, from what I understand, you have this thrill too, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's all just like messing around and playing with. It's kind of just a new way of like playing around with the tech and stuff. And again, my background is firmly not in electronics. Like even when I was doing the telecom degree, like it's still very front end heavy. Like I do not really code still. I usually try to partner with people who do more traditional coding than I do, because it's not something I'm super comfortable with. It's also not something I'm really in love with. And I'm more in love with sitting down and like taking apart something manually and like seeing where I can connect the parts. I like to solder. I like to do all that kind of stuff, but I'm super not interested in the code. So I just don't mess with it. I took like a C++ class in undergrad, and it was awful. Hated it.
I could see it in your look. Like the moment you say C++, like your eyes were full of disgust.
Listen, there was one compiler error and it set me back from coding forever. It was awful. It was so bad.
But that's what's cool about Alt+Ctrl. Like it can attract a lot of different people. Like the only common stuff I'd say is a love for tinkering around, at least. Like that's the bare minimum for Alt+Ctrl. But after that, if you love doing theater and narrative design or whatever, you can go full stage design type of thinking and try to understand how this will feel as a space, etc. If you enjoy making indie games, obviously you can code and use a game engine and do stuff for this. Alt+Ctrl is so much welcoming for different practices that wouldn't fit, I'd say, in traditional game development type of process, I'd say.
I think it's also that Alt+Ctrl in general is a space for creative thinking, and for people who enjoy creative thinking, like who enjoy being presented with the problem of, well, I want to do this, but I need to get this outcome, and being like excited by that prospect.
Yeah.
Like those are the people I've seen who seem to thrive in Alt+Ctrl environments. Like, because otherwise you end up with stuff like, I've known people who are like, I want to do this, but because like, you know, your Xbox controller can't handle 100 inputs. It doesn't have 100 inputs. Your keyboard doesn't have 100 inputs. So like, it's like, oh, I want to make a thing that's a fighting game with 100 buttons. I have to come up with a solution for that because that does not exist.
Yeah.
And so I think you end up with creative thinking and out of the box thinking. That is what excites me personally about Alt+Ctrl.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of out of the box, we did see on your website some photos of a version of the controller with 100 candles.
Oh,
Is that how?
No.
What was that?
That was a mistake. So again, as this is all learning process, and this is another one where I usually get dragged by woodworkers for this one, or like like non-tech, but more like physical construction people. Like they're like, you did what? I decided after I did the whole top of the board, and I'd already, the holes had already been cut. I went back through and covered it in Sharpie, but Sharpie isn't, like if you touch Sharpie, it runs even like long term. So I was like, oh, well, I should put an epoxy on top of that. But I've already cut all these holes. So what do I put in the holes? And so I was like, oh, I've got a great idea. I'll put candles in them, and then I'll put epoxy resin around them and let the epoxy resin cure, and then I'll burn out the candles, and that'll be a perfect solution. Spoilers for not the picture, but just in general, it turns out epoxy resin burns.
Right.
I didn't know that. I should have researched that. I did not. Epoxy resin burns. So what you don't see is that after that picture, I got some really cool pictures of it before I blew it out, because it was already like burning.
Right.
I've got some good pictures of it, but what you don't see is that it set off the fire alarm in my house.
Okay.
Like at one point there were flames like this big coming off of it. Yeah, it was it worked out fine. That's the board. That's the board I've toured with.
Right. So what was this meant to be, a kind of a beautiful send off for the piece or something?
No, no. I still have the board. The board's fine. No,
Right.
that is the process before I put the buttons in. That is in the process of me building the board that I took to most places in the US, not to Europe or Korea. That is the board. That is like step 4 on the construction of the board. I accidentally set it on fire.
I'm just trying to figure out why you put candles in it. I'm like, what?
because I had an epoxy. I had poured the epoxy. I didn't want the epoxy to run through the holes that were already drilled. So I put candles in the holes.
And then, because you've got a bunch of candles in there, you may as well light them.
Well, and I thought that they would melt out. But again, epoxy resin, flammable, very bad idea. I don't recommend it. I told a few people that before who were like more like physically, like they build woodworkers, and we're like, you could have burned the house down. And I was like,
that's the fun in it.
Yeah, but that's the risk takers here. That's the thing. That's Alt+Ctrl is about risks.
Beautiful photos.
Yeah.
If I do say so myself, it looks really cool. Don't do that. But it looked super cool. I had a feeling that might come up when you asked for a photo of that, and I was like, oh man. Sure.
I mean, it is a stunning piece, and like, and the idea of like what game could you make with 100 candles is quite an exciting kind of question. A game, art piece, whatever it is, it's quite an interesting provocation.
It's a gorgeous idea, and it'd be something I think there's a bunch of things where I've always been like, oh, that'd be really cool. And it is something that's like, oh, what could you do? But then also the other part of me that like ran events for a couple of years was also like, dear God, no. Like, I had to stop my partner one year because he really wanted to do an exhibit using an electromagnet and ferrofluid, which is really cool.
Okay.
Because ferrofluid's like reactive to magnets, and like so it moves and it's really murky. But most of the exhibits that we ran at that time were at children's galleries.
Right.
And I was like, you are not putting an object that's full of water, a toxic chemical, an electromagnet that you've accidentally set on fire once in a gallery with children.
Yeah.
Like, no, like the one weird thing about running events is you suddenly become like way more of a risk adverse individual. Like, you're like looking at every object you make and you're like, okay, but could this survive 2 months in a children's gallery?
Right, yeah.
No, then I guess I'm rebuilding it from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've certainly had, because I've made a game involving paper shredders. You can see a couple of them behind my shoulder, and the thing of learning, oh, children will stick their hand in the mouth into the thing, and that became a very important. I need to choose the right shredder because the shredding hole needs to be smaller than a child's fingers.
I mean, there's the the Dream a Bit Bigger, the bed one. That thing is gorgeous. It went down every week or so because some kid would climb on it.
Right.
And I hadn't properly secured the board that it was in the top. I was using a breadboard, which was a foolish thing to do anyway.
Right.
I'd like breadboarded all the controls. So someone would like climb on it and like shake it free basically, like every 2 weeks. And so you'd have to go back and like every 2 weeks reset this thing. Because the big show that we used to do here, I don't know if it got fussed because of the pandemic. But the big show we used to do was 2.5 months or so at a children's art museum.
Right.
So you really build towards longevity. That was like one of the first shows I ever did. And it was like, oh wow. Yeah. Never again. I've never breadboarded a project that any public member has touched since.
Right.
Because it's just like, oh God, no.
No, but children are a really difficult audience. I mean, they're infamous for that. Every time we have an exhibit specifically aimed towards children, we know that we will have unexpected problems. Not only because, so there is a poetry in that, which is children, they always find a way to think about something you didn't think about because they have this weird way of thinking. It's really original thinking because they don't have the same formal concepts that many people would share. But there is another thing, which is the lack of restraint. On the last installation, the one with toys we made, we secured, so there are toys on the installation and we secured everything. We didn't expect one behavior, which was there were dolls and some children had an violent urge to tear off the head, which we didn't expect. Like, it's such a violent thing to do. You have this human shape doll, it's a cute one, and some children, they wanted to behead it, like, but super violently. Like, it was really surprising, and it's partly funny, but also it's sometimes discouraging. Like, there is nothing that will last long enough with children. Like, you have to limit this in time necessarily.
The two groups of people that I never plan for are that are impossible for me, at least, to like fully plan for, are children and drunk people.
Of course, and they have some common points, actually.
They have so many common points, but like, I showed one of the big shows I do usually every year is MagFest. It's in DC. It's a 24-hour show for 72 hours. So it is open all week, like all weekend. And it's the ultimate stress test for any project. Like, we took claw machine. One of the last projects we did was claw machines. We took those to MagFest as like a stress test. Like, oh, how will this survive MagFest? Because they serve alcohol. It's open 72 hours. You're not going to be there for 72 hours. I mean, I'm not. So I remember they broke a projector one year. I walked over just in time to see someone physically pulling a button out from the top. They managed to unscrew it and like yank it out before I got to them. And they're like, oh, I thought that's how it was meant to be played. How? You thought what?
Oh, that's brilliant.
I mean, like drunk people, because like I've done a couple of shows. MagFest is the big one with drunk people, and then I did Hand-Eye Society's fancy dress party, and it was the same thing. It's just drunk people, and they're different. They're a different level, like, but pretty close to children.
Yeah, they have some common points, but there is one big difference. There is a real a flood hazard with drunk people, like as they carry around, and this is not even their fault. Like they carry around like a big pint of beer, and they already drank some. So naturally, you will have some accidents happening here. So the first thing you have to do for this type of audience is obviously make it waterproof.
Yeah.
Which can be like obviously in a factory, there is no problem with that. But when you do something in a fab lab or in your garage, basement, whatever, it's not that easy actually to make everything super waterproof. So this is something specific to drunks, I'd say drunk people. And yeah, I mean, people from MacFest and that were happy that there is a shout out to MacFest actually. So
I love MacFest.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yay Mittens is saying in the chat, if only there was a way to make a wax seal on all the buttonholes.
I mean, generally, it's not actually a problem. I've had people spill beer on that specific game. It's not a huge problem because it's an epoxy bar top. So, and then the buttons are all the way down. And if water does get through, it usually falls straight through. Like there's a fabric undercoating to like, so I can easily access it. And so it'll hit that, but it usually doesn't hit any of the electronic components just because of where it's going and where I've placed the Arduinos. They're pretty far out.
Right.
Spatially. So it's actually not usually a problem. The funny thing is actually that Death by Audio, Wonderville rather, and Death by Audio built a version of my game that was showing at Wonderville for about a year or two. It's currently in my house, but they actually built cup holders into it. It was one of their requirements when they built it. They're like, we're putting cup holders, and I was like, I don't know about that. Like, because in my board, if you push it, the whole thing moves.
Right.
And it's like you want to put cup holders in something that physically shape.
Yeah.
I don't know what their success was.
So someone in the chat, that's why I just laughed 5 minutes ago, someone in the chat actually spilled some beer on your game, actually. So we have like a first-hand experience of that. But yeah, you're right about the controller. I'd say most of the time, the problems I have with people that are tipsy or drunk with, it's when the installation is a table. So you will have some borders, a frame, and this is an invitation to put your beer or your phone or whatever. And this is when the accidents are starting to happen, because they will put their beer at the beginning, there is no problem. And then suddenly they forget about it and their elbow will shoot on this. So we had this problem with our last game specifically. We managed to have not an epoxy, an acrylic glass window, and then we sealed it. But there is so much you can do.
There's only so much. And I mean, this is why I have a bag of spare parts I take to shows like this. Just like, oh, and somebody broke that. Good news, I have 4 more.
Yeah.
I mean, do people tend to play the way they play Sententable? Is that like, do they tend to get quite violent and boisterous, or do people sort of, are they exploring what all the buttons do and being very meticulous about it? Or
if they try for meticulous, they usually lose.
Right.
So the functional thing about Sententable is that it is randomized at the top of it's a best 2 of 3 fighting game style. So that's a very standard like tournament style, and it randomizes at the start of every round. So you have 50 total buttons and 80 something possible combinations. So you might not get the same button you definitely won't get the same button in the same place twice.
Right.
You won't. So if you're meticulous about it and the other person goes for the scorched earth, incredibly aggressive strategy, you're going to lose before you find anything good.
Right.
Which usually really bothers like people who play traditional fighting games, because they're like, I will get this, I will master that, and then they're beat with like by like a 9-year-old with a pixie stick. Because like unfortunately, I mean, it's one of the reasons I built the board it's actually built out of an IKEA children's table.
Right.
My version, and the travel version, which went to things like Feral Vector and stuff like that, is actually on doorstops for the same reason. My expectation is that you're going to be really mean to it. So it's made out of mostly factory made objects that are designed to get slammed.
Right.
Which is it's one of the things I'm a big proponent of in Alt+Ctrl in general. Is I don't manufacture my own parts because I don't know what I'm doing, and I love using parts that were designed specifically for children or construction, because both of those two things you can usually get a lot of violence out of.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've come to expect people to be really violent. But yeah, no, the actual best 100% strategy where you will win almost all the time is you take your full body and you cover every button, because it should theoretically basically all respond.
Yeah.
Or holding your hands out like this and trying to hit like 10 buttons at once.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's trolling people that are actually playing fighting games.
I saw one of my favorite stories is I saw a guy come up with one of those big, like really fancy fighting sticks at one of the first MagFest I went to, and no one knew what the game was. Shows up with this big fighting game stick, and he's got his girlfriend or wife, female partner with him, and she destroys him. She destroys him. And like, it's not even close. Like she two zeros him, which is really hard to do.
Right.
Like generally the game is actually fairly well balanced. It should be a player A wins, player 2 wins, player 1 wins, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's usually like that, like, or a combination. Usually it's a 2-1 win. She destroys this guy. And he is, I think, actually a very good fighting game player. I have no idea. I don't know who any of these people are.
Right.
But she's like, I've never won. like in their relationship, they play fighting games and he wins and she doesn't. And maybe that's fine for them, but it's fun to like level that playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I want everyone to feel both sides of that, for me at least, classic fighting game dichotomy, which is you feel like a golden god, all victory is yours, and you feel like you have no idea what's going on, and everything's on fire. Which is really the only way I think of fighting games.
So that's basically a simulation of yourself playing a fighting game. Okay.
I want to hit with all of my games in general, but with this one specifically, I want to hit an emotional note more than a physical one. It's that sensation rather than just like, oh, this will be fun. It's like, I mean, it is, but I don't know, that connection to it.
And so the theme of violently mashing on buttons, I understand that's something you revisited in a game called These Violent Delights. Is that?
Oh, a little bit. Yeah. So I worked with a local developer named R25th, and we were joking about that Hollywood hacking. So on the back end, we called it Hollywood Hacking Simulator, basically until it came out.
Right.
And the idea was that one was weirdly hard because we'd never done networking before, either of us.
Right.
And it's 2 networked PCs. They were actually in separate rooms of the gallery they were in, which was really cool because one of them was set up to look like futuristic office kind of environment. You are the government, you are the corporation in this cyberpunk dystopia. And then the other one was set up to look like you are the kid in the basement trying to hack the corporation. There was narrative there. It's kind of hidden in like secondary screens and stuff. And I don't know if anyone ever got it, but the idea is like the kid is like lost their friend and they're trying to find them.
Right.
And the corporation is like eating them. And you're just trying to basically outmash each other.
Right.
It's
and this is done so the hacker gets 4 keyboards to mash with and the corp gets 2 keyboards to mash with. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they're more powerful.
Right.
There's a little bit of balancing there, but yeah, it's the corporation's more powerful, but they have fewer keyboards. And they also can't see, I think one of them can't see the progress, but the other one can.
I see.
Like, so there's like levels to it. And you've got to balance between tabbing between these screens
Yeah.
And it was hectic. It
Yeah.
was really fun to show.
Right.
Because like people got really into it. But
Yeah.
I think I don't have as good documentation of that one. I think I lost a lot of the
Oh,
documentation on that.
right.
Well, yeah, we didn't found that many images or videos, but the game is actually on itch. So
If you have 6 keyboards.
yeah, I do have 6 keyboards.
Okay, well, maybe I
So
should.
I didn't play it yet, obviously, because I heard about the game just before the show. I mean, a few hours ago
You're
when
fine.
preparing, but I added it to a playlist that I call Alt+Ctrl at Home on itch, which are about revisiting a lot of keyboards, mice, gamepads, etc. So so yeah, I will put the link actually in the chat, and I'm really looking forward to play this. I know my partner is watching the show right now and he's preparing the keyboards, and I'll make sure to send you a video of that,
would be
in a few weeks.
That would be perfect. There's I think 2 of my games are set up to be playable offline. I mean, technically
Okay.
you can do little d, but little d is just not the same without the controller.
Yeah.
But I think Sententable also has a variant, a keyboard variant on itch.
Okay.
Yeah. You need 4 keyboards. Yeah. It was made mostly so I was applying to shows and they were
Right.
really insistent that I like send them a build. And I was like, it's a 100-button fight stick.
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, you need to send us a build. And I was like, if you have 4 keyboards, you can play this.
Yeah.
So, and it's actually shown, I think, twice now on that build. It showed once in Colorado, and then recently I think it showed in England, but I haven't actually seen footage from that one.
I'm looking for the itch.io version of Sententable. Yeah, I will add it to the list. So basically you can play it with your keyboard.
Yep, you need 4 of them, but yep, you can play it.
Okay, well, so this will be added to the Alt+Ctrl at Home list right now, like live right now.
And I think the people in Colorado said it worked. I have only messed with it like once because it's not a thing that I ever really intended. It just like it became a necessity from like application processes because they really wanted like oh well, we need to be able to play this. And it's like okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because after these Violent Delights, the development team I was working with at Super Soul, they were like, oh, if you already have the tech for these Violent Delights, because most people don't know this, but you guys probably do. If you plug in 2 keyboards, they will both act as 1 keyboard.
Of course. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So it's really obvious if you've got like a laptop and a keyboard, but that was a problem if you're plugging in 4 keyboards. Because you wanted them to act as 4 separate keyboards.
Absolutely, yeah. And so what did you do? Did you try
there is
to
a Unity plugin?
Okay.
That was actually the easiest way. Yeah. Someone
Okay, do you know the name? Because I'm super interested. So right now, my solution is to try to make a difference between the serial ports, which is like tiresome. So if you have the name of the plugin, doesn't need to be right now. I can ask you that after the show, but I'm personally interested in that.
I will have to ask R25th. He did he's the one who like tracked it down. It was a problem for us for a while because it was just like same issues. Like, oh, okay, did we do the serial ports? Like, how do we do this? And then someone was like, I think you have to pay for it, but it was worth it. It's like it like streamlined the process so much. That was a Unity. I think it was a Unity plugin. I think it was paid.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I can buy my Unity plugins. No
I didn't want to throw it out there because there's a lot of like free Unity plugins. I didn't want to be like, it's a Unity plugin and also it's free. It's not.
Right.
Okay, but if it works, I mean,
yeah, sometimes it's worth it. Like if it gets rid of like a major stopgap, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, for my students, the Unity plugin I'm using for Arduino is actually one that is not free, but from a UI perspective, it's way easier for them to use. And I don't want to have too much friction before
Yeah.
getting to the point, because otherwise, there's, especially for designers, it looks like too big of a challenge. And at the moment they can finally start to design, their how do you say that, wore off, like they don't have any real desire to do this anymore. So sometimes paying to be more straightforward is the way to go.
I mean, every additional step you add into the process is another point in which someone drops off. In general, I mean, that's a classic design principle. It's like what they teach you in like UI design, right? Is like every additional menu someone has to go through, you like lose a percentage every single time. And I think it's the same way with like any sort of process thing. It's one of the reasons I get really excited whenever a new tool comes out that like makes things easier, because it's like every point, because like I don't know, early stuff with like Twine and like narrative stuff, I tried to use a really early version of Yarn, and I immediately fell off because it had a presupposition that I would understand how to use Unity, which at that point I did not. It was like, I think one of the first instructions in it was something like upload this to Unity, like, you know, which is like not complicated. I had absolutely no idea what that meant. I was a writer. I put the statement into Google, and that didn't give me any results.
Right,
All it wanted me to do was like load it in Unity, but I didn't know what it meant. And so I love when things get streamlined by like easy process stuff, like, because it really opens it up to people.
I mean, it's not even the amount of knowledge. I'd say it's about having a smooth curve. So even if the end of it is like super high, if the curve is smooth, it's okay. You can start doing stuff just with, like, many people start with makey and technologies like this, and it's perfectly fine because it's smooth. And the curve doesn't mean that you cannot do super engineering stuff, complicated like NASA shit, but you have something to start. And this is where there is this gap that I'm trying to smoothen as much as possible for my students, because otherwise I lose them. The last amount is too high, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But yeah, Alistair, I saw that maybe you were about to talk about the other game that Amanda made with or 25th. Not at all. Okay, I'm fully interpreting stuff. Okay, it's okay. I made up stuff. That's fine. So, Amanda, there is another game that you made with Aura 25th.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry. I've seen which one you meant. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
That's Glow Orb, right?
That is right, yes.
Yeah.
So that's Glow Cloud. That's a game you made with Aura 25th.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, so I made, to be more precise, I made the physical installation. The physical installation held something like 5 or 6 games. They rotated every 10 minutes, I think, was the amount. Glow Cloud was once, it's got a really long, very poetic name, because our 25th loves his really long poetic names. It's something like the thunderstorm carried us softly into the sleep, and then we couldn't dream again. I call it the Glow Cloud when I talk about it. That was also a mistake. Most of my projects are some form of mistake, but I view them that fondly. They are my messed up children. And the reason this one was a mistake was purely coincidental, which is that I actually talked to William Shear, the designer of Manifold Garden, when I first got started with this, because I don't know if this is super common knowledge, but he was originally a balloon artist.
Oh, right.
Oh, no. I didn't know that.
If you look up his stuff, like before, he used to make like these really big balloon installations, like these massive balloon installations. It's his pre-game. It's one of his pre-game dev things. He mentioned it in a talk, and I've spoken to him a few times since then. So he was the person I contacted when we first had this idea of, wouldn't it be really cool if we filled up these balloons and then we ran lights behind them? Like, wouldn't that be super cool? You would diffuse the light. The space is going to be entirely dark. This will look really cool. And I contacted him and I was like, how do you make balloons last longer? And he responded, and I've never forgotten it because it was an amazing line. He just said, "You can't, they're balloons." Which, fair. I was hoping there was like some like trick to it, like, you know, you
Of
pop
course, yeah.
nitrogen into it or something that like will increase the longevity. The answer is no, there is nothing you can do, they're balloons. So I was fine with this, I thought, because I did a bunch of really long tests. They're actually on my TikTok of all places.
Right.
I did a bunch of really long wear tests on balloons and balloon types. And on lights, I like set up an LED strip and I ran tests to see how long it took for balloons to deflate.
Right.
No one's touching them because they're 8 feet in the air and they're big. And I didn't mind the way they looked when they deflated. I thought it made kind of an organic vibe to it. I thought it was really cool. So again, none of this is a problem. I knew I was going to have to replace these balloons every 2 weeks. The problem is the week before installation, I broke my leg.
Oh.
Because of the balloons, or
No,
not related. Okay.
I was wearing a pair of platform shoes. They exploded. I snapped my ankle.
Ooh.
It was amazing. We didn't quite know that I had broken my leg, so I did do all of the ladder work for that project on a broken leg. That was the mistake. I had to go up and down a ladder over and over again, of course, across the entire project to remount these balloons every 2 weeks.
Right.
Because they deflate every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It stands out as like a really strong visual thing in my catalog of like work I've done, but whoo, buddy.
And I understand it could be controlled by Twitch, is that right?
Oh, so we did one of our test versions to make sure that the code was going to work. Was we ran it all weekend.
Right.
Because we're very durability focused in Kentucky on these projects. So we ran a weekend long test where you could control it via Twitch. That build still exists somewhere. And it was a good way to be like, hey, this can receive inputs and it won't crash 24 hours in. Because when you put things up in a gallery, especially in a gallery where they have no tech background, you have to presume that they will do things like forget to turn it off. And so we've ended up having to do a bunch of stuff like build in systems for what happens if it crashes. Can it restart itself? And there's some hacky solutions to that. But yeah, in this case, it was just if someone were to leave it on for 24 hours, in this case 48, because we ran it all weekend, would it be fine? And yeah, it was fine.
Okay.
And also I wanted to make sure that the balloons wouldn't explode.
Yeah.
Constant fear. I was incorrect. The actual problem with the balloons was that they were under a bunch of projectors, because the setup in the gallery that caused them to explode.
The heat, of course. Yeah. I didn't think about it before you mentioned the projectors. So yeah, but I was thinking a lot about the pressure, because I know that the difference in pressure can make a big change. Like a balloon can actually inflate a lot depending on the pressure, but I wasn't thinking about the projectors.
I didn't think of it took me most of the run of the show, because one of the complaints from the person working the desk, which was very close to where this piece was that it kept exploding. Like just every now and then a piece, like a balloon would just pop, and they're big. They were some of the balloons were I don't know, like 24 inches, and so like you've heard a small balloon pop, you probably haven't heard like a big boy pop before. They would just explode. And what was happening was it took us almost the entire run to figure it out, is that they were right next to the projector fans, and the heat from the projector would just overheat them and they would just explode. Wow. And they're horrifying sounding. They're awful. It was apparently gave the poor person who worked the desk like a case of nerves, because like
no, yeah, and you never know exactly when it will happen. So it keeps you on your toes all the time. But I love it. I love it, actually. I know it's not what you were looking for.
I feel bad for the person. I feel bad for the person working the desk, because like they didn't sign up for that.
I mean, I feel like the impermanence and the chaos of it is kind of part of the fun, and the idea that you've got an art piece that, will change periodically because
Yeah.
balloons will disappear and need to be replaced. It's like a real cloud.
And it felt really cool. And again, like it photographs beautifully. I'm not bummed about the project. All of my issues are strictly related to the maintenance of it, which I thought I was prepared for and did not. But it's gorgeous. And we took a version of that project to MagFest where we mounted it on my bed.
Right.
So the same like the same wire structure and everything. So it has a box that you push buttons on, and the buttons correspond to like audio cues. Mostly you build a rainstorm. Was the main piece that was designed for that. So you build a rainstorm, there's thunder, there's lightning that goes across it. It's gorgeous. Like I can say that unequivocally, it is the prettiest thing I've ever made. I understand why people do so many projects with LEDs now. It was so pretty. But yeah, we took a version of it to MagFest, which was really cool because MagFest is a convention. It has 7,000 people or something that come to it. So we created, just by virtue of the bed covered in all these strands of material and this little box that plays a thunderstorm sound, sound didn't escape from it. So you would sit in here and you would just hear a thunderstorm, and it was like you'd walked into another room, but you're on the middle of the convention floor.
Right.
And like I was hoping that would happen, but I didn't know until we showed up, and it was easily one of the coolest things with that project.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful.
It was so lovely.
And apparently there were many people at this MagFest.
It's a big show. And I feel there's a good
in
chance
the chat they say 25K. In the chat it said
there we go. So smaller amount
25K.
than I thought.
Yeah, but I mean
that's still a lot.
25K, come on. Yeah, it's still huge.
I mean,
yeah.
I thought it was the biggest show I've ever done is actually the Kentucky State Fair.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, it's one of the only things I keep from my work at my work. I'm a blue ribbon winner at the Kentucky State Fair.
Oh.
That's awesome.
It runs for a month, and so it has 100,000 people visit it.
Oh, wow.
Which is by far the biggest show I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, and the weirdest crowd, because it's like people there, they have a hay baling competition.
Right.
And then like 30 feet away is my board.
Yeah. But I think there is something nice about being involved with something that isn't just video games. The video game space is a space that we know, we're all fairly familiar with it, sort of, but to be able to go out and, okay, here's a space where they would not expect to see something like this, and they're going to come in with totally different expectations, and like I think there is something nice, and it is us, you're reaching out to an audience who is not necessarily going to have encountered this stuff before.
Yeah.
I did a talk a long time ago about how to run your own events. And part of it was like you need to seek out places that are not the standard where you're expecting to show, like because you'll get way more interesting people to play your games than if you're just like I love shows at libraries even, or like stuff like that, like places where people aren't expecting to encounter games. Like there's nothing wrong with gamers. Like some of the best audiences I've had are at places like Anime Central in Chicago is a great one. But there's something also great about going to a place where someone's not expecting to encounter you and they get to play your project, and it gets to they get to experience it in a new way. And especially with alternative controllers, because I feel like we have a lower barrier to entry by virtue of being so weird. Like people would say, oh, I don't play games when they'd see mine. I was like, you can push a button. And then you just kind of bully them into playing it sometimes. But I'm right. I know I'm right. You can push a button.
Yep.
And that's
yeah.
And that's most of it, because people are like, because if you hand someone like an Xbox controller, like it's terrifying to somebody who doesn't play. Like it doesn't make any sense. I mean, one of my I know someone who like showed his girlfriend like one of the first, she was like, I want to play games, and the first game he gave her was Dead Space,
right?
And which is like a first person horror game, and he couldn't stop laughing because she's got stuck in a corner immediately and just spun in a circle looking at the ground.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because it's a dual stick. What?
Yeah.
The first huge cultural gap in video game happened, I mean, for me, when I study the evolution of a controller with the twin stick appearance. So there were different standards coming, but all of them were quite accessible. I mean, like the directional arrows, sorry, in French we say cross anyway, and I got all messed up. Arrows, etc. All these were quite accessible. And then twin stick and 3D appears, and this is a huge cultural gap, even in the way of controlling the camera. This different idea of you have one stick for the avatar, the other one for the camera. This whole logic is not making sense in any other field. It's really specific to video games. And this is a lot. Yeah, and it's weird. I mean, except in video games, of course, but it's idiomatic to video games. And that's hard to enter video games. Well, Alt+Ctrl and other games, of course, other ways of using controllers can be a way for people to enjoy games without gatekeeping them, even sometimes without being willing to, of course.
I think it's also why you have things like, say, the Wii Motion, with the Wii, with the motion controller. I think it's why you still saw it in so many households for as long as you did, was because mom can pick up a Wii Motion remote and it makes sense, even if it isn't like there is a connection that's to it, where you're just like, you know, I think one of their ads showed like grandpa bowling kind of thing, but like that's ad copy, but that's also kind of true. Like it's an easy controller motion to do. My partner was once showing a game, and we knew that it wasn't going to have a lot of people there who were familiar with games, so he made foot pedals. And when he showed it, he was just like, people go, again, I don't know how to do it. He's like, you can drive a car. But you drove here. So like, and that helped, because it's a single, in that case, that was, I think that's Jetpack Fandango. And that was each person controlled one direction on a single character who's like floating in space. So it's like, it's a one button game. If I hand you a controller and you're competent with a controller, that's easy. But if you aren't competent with a controller, it's just nonsensical. And yeah, I mean, that's most of what that's where most of my design ethos comes from with like these things. It's just like, you've got to build towards someone being able to use your game no matter what, like no matter what the controllers are, no matter what the audience is, hopefully.
Yeah.
And what
if you can smash a guitar, you can play one night only.
Yeah.
For example. This was a perfectly smooth transition to
this was a flawless segue.
So yeah, because so when I wanted to make a tweet and communication about having you tonight, I had to choose. So I always choose what I believe to be the most famous game from the guest, of course, and one that I can sell easily, like with a one sentence pitch. And of course I took one night only. But yeah, I will let you talk about this, but this is amazing.
It's interesting that you say that you said previously that Centennial is my best known game, because I agree, it is. It's the one I've traveled worldwide for, but One Night Only is the one that's like actually gotten like press coverage. Like Kotaku, like I have a Kotaku article about One Night Only. Like which is like I'm not anywhere close on any of the other stuff. Like I've had like news cover it, but not like that. But One Night Only it actually was inspired by, I can't remember the name of the event because it didn't end up happening, but it was at GDC, and the idea of the event was that there are games that were designed for this one event, and at the end of the night the games get destroyed. And there ended up being like controversy with the creator, with the guy running it, I think. I'm not sure. I wasn't even at GDC that year, but I remembered reading about it, and my partner and I were discussing it. I was like, that just seems like such a waste of a good concept, in that you destroy the game, but like we're all control people. You could destroy the controller. This could be literally one night only. And that was kind of the idea and the genesis of it. And the second thing is that I was at a bar and I contacted BitBash. So there's a chance I was not sober. I can't remember, but I was definitely at a bar. And I emailed BitBash and I was like, do you have a budget for me to buy 500, do you have a budget for me to buy? It ended up being 16 guitars, but I like just a ton of guitars to smash on stage. And they were like, let's talk numbers, like immediately. Like they responded like so fast, like under 10 minutes. They were like, perfect, sounds great, let's talk.
Yeah.
And that's and full credit to Bitbash, I have an excellent relationship with them. I've gone to their show basically every year. I love their show. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, they were like, oh no, absolutely. You want to destroy guitars on stage? And so we designed a game where the idea was built around that guitar smashing moment. Like I feel like every person kind of wants to do, where because it's always in those big rock and roll movies, like someone takes a guitar and at the end of they have an amazing solo. At the end of the solo, they smash it on stage, and that's such a cool idea. And I was like, okay, perfect. I really want to do that. And so we built the game around that. There's like copper in your you have a glove that has copper in it. You touch the different chords on the guitar, strings is the word I was looking for, and then that builds towards and then that corresponds to basically a rhythm game on screen. I painted each of the guitars because I wanted them to be cool and interesting and well loved and beautiful for their one special performance, because there's an ephemerality to it that I really wanted to play up. And there's a big metal plate on the floor, and you take the guitar and you smash it into that plate, and that is actually the final hit on the boss.
Right.
Because the finish move. Okay.
It's the finishing move. And I licensed all the music for it. Like that's actually the largest expense in the project.
Oh, right.
But yeah, I think I had to raise $2,000
right
for the music, which wasn't terrible because I was mostly talking to like tiny punk bands.
Yeah.
Who were all super pumped.
Yeah.
And then we ran it for one night at Bitbash. And I got to the event and they were like, oh, is the stage okay? And they took me into a 400-person auditorium.
Right.
I was expecting
awesome.
one of those little like riser stages that you see at like a school event. I was expecting that. I got in there and there was like lighting.
Right.
And there was it's such a big, no, it's more than 400 because I've like ushered a 400-person event. It was bigger. It had a balcony. Like there was multiple levels. It is the largest room I've ever performed in.
Right.
And it was weirdly full.
Okay.
Okay.
When the actual event happened, like there were so many people there. And yeah, the energy was really cool. And I would love to do it again. I tried to pitch it to Alt+Ctrl GDC and they firmly turned me down.
Right.
I like looked into it. I was like, can I buy like a batter's cage? Or something like, because like debris goes everywhere. It is a very messy game.
Yeah.
And then because I also tried to pitch it to oh god, I think it was just GDC in general. I was trying to pitch it for the Nuovo Award.
Okay.
And they were like, you can't submit to only one category. There is no playable build of your game.
Right.
And it was like, technically.
Yeah.
That is kind of the point.
Yeah.
The Amaze Festival could be really interested in that.
Yeah.
The spirit is much more, to put it simply, punk. They have performances.
I have always wanted to go to Amaze. It's on my short list of places that I wanted to go because there's a couple of shows I've never gotten to do, mostly because it's also because I was gearing up to go to more shows. Like I really wanted to go to Bit Summit. Yeah. And then there was a minor global pandemic.
Really?
Yeah.
I have heard
what happened.
Not worth mentioning because like there's that thing for a while, like what did you do to cause the pandemic? And it was like, oh, I was gonna go to like Japan.
Right.
Here it happened. It was like Japan, and I was like, oh, I'm finally gonna pitch to either the South Africa, it's one of the Amazes. I'm gonna pitch to one of them. I was hoping South Africa because I haven't actually shown in Africa.
Yeah.
But minor pandemic.
Yeah, but the UMA's festival is actually going back live, like physical. The physical event is coming back, and if I think that would perfectly fill the performance track. So I don't know if it's like just 5 minutes of people playing, no, but with 16 guitars, I assume that you can have some times of people playing. So this would be a perfect performance for the UMA's festival. Alistair knows what I'm talking about because he's into performances too, and it's a different type of thing. I'm into installation, so I have different problems to deal with. But yeah, this would be an amazing like I want to say muddy performance in the same of money shot, like because the speech is so efficient that and
It also looks really cool.
I want to see this.
Yeah.
It's like badass kind of. So
photographs. I mean it because it's that big moment from the end of anything. I think it does photograph very well. I have seen that in the photographs, because unfortunately this was like, we've talked a little bit before broadcast about this, that I try to do a really good job documenting my own work. And so I actually bought like a really nice webcam for this. I set it up in the corner. I forgot to plug the laptop into a wall. So all of the documentation from that show is secondhand.
Right.
It's like, I put out a big call on Bitbash, helped me promote it. And like, it was like, if you took like an Instagram story, and you send it to me, I have no footage of this project.
Okay.
So like a sketch. If you sketch the event during the event, please send it to us.
So I have some shots from people, and those are it. Like, that's why all the footage, if you look on my YouTube channel, I have a video of it. All the footage from that video is just random people.
Right.
And it's why all the footage is so different in each thing. It looks intentional. It's not. It's just like, I think it's 8 total people sent me clips, mostly of themselves, because that's what you photograph, right? You're like,
of course.
You like hand it to your friend, like, I'm gonna go on stage and I'm gonna smash a guitar. And then they send you, and then they all sent me those videos. But yeah, that was, I mean, fantastic community effort, but I would like to have better documentation of that.
Yeah, but Yay Mittens is saying in the chat what I was about to say too, which is it gives a sort of punk raw feels to it that fits the ephemerité, the fact that it's ephemeral. Yeah. Anyway, I don't have the word for that.
Yeah, but I guess the idea. Oh no, go ahead.
No, do you have the word I'm looking for?
No.
Give it to me. Okay, that's disappointing. That's disappointing. Before, because time's running. That's what time does. That's all the time. It does this. Before we talk about the last game, the most recent, your news, let's say, I would like to invite the audience to, well, actually, Alistair, that's your segment to introduce, so please do.
Yes, that's right. So regular viewers of the show will know that we like to end our shows with a little audience interaction creativity segment. At the end of the show, the final segment we'll be doing, Amanda will be asked to come up with a new concept, a new idea for a game or controller that's going to be made from objects that you suggest in chat. So what we're going to need you to do, and I'm going to switch on the bot now. And so the bot is listening to the Twitch chat. If you type in anything beginning with an exclamation mark, that will get added to the pool of objects that will be that Amanda will have to use. So we see Tatiana's already added a hay baler to the pool. And if you type in, for example...
Of course I did. Yeah. I was waiting for that moment since we mentioned the fair. Like, I had it written down. I wanted the hay baler.
So Ash has put in exclamation mark beeswax. So if you want some beeswax, then we got exclamation mark yo-yo's just come in. So you may have to think about a yo-yo. At the end of the show, what we're going to do is we are going to randomly, the computer is going to randomly select for us 5 of these objects. And it will be up to you to come up with a with a concept for a game or a controller that uses all of these things. So audience, please do keep these coming in, exclamation mark followed by whatever it is that you want to see Amanda using. Meanwhile, shall we talk about some claw machines?
We certainly can.
So we understand this is the project that you've been working on most recently. Is you've been modifying claw machines and turning them into brand new games.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit more
Of
about
course.
these machines?
So I'm kind of infamous for it shows. I love a claw machine. I'm good at claw machines. I love a claw machine. And this has come up in conversation a few times, specifically with Socks, who runs the IndieCade at MagFest, the specific one that's independent arcade games, not the whole IndieCade. And so one time he was like, "Oh, hey, there's an auction where I live."
Right.
In Pittsburgh. And they're selling claw machines for like super cheap. And we looked at the claw machines and they were going for like $20
Right.
for like a full-size claw machine, which is really good. For people who aren't me and don't like regularly check the prices of claw machines, they're usually about somewhere between $500 and $700. So I talked with the president of the organization that I work for, Run Jump Dev. And I was like, "Oh, hey, I want to do something with claw machines." And he's like, "What if we do like a show and everyone does their own claw machine and that'll be really cool." And so we bought 8 of them.
Right.
For anywhere between $7 and about, I think it was like $11 was the cheapest and $70 was the most expensive.
Right.
We bought them sight unseen. Socks went and like checked and made sure that they were real. Because that's a stupid good rate for a claw machine. And like to guarantee that they weren't like falling apart.
Right.
And there a couple of them had things like someone had cut off like, the power cord, but that's an easy fix. That's easy. And so this meant that we had to go pick them up in Beaver Creek, Pennsylvania, which for context, for people who are not from the continental United States, that is approximately an 8 to 10 hour drive. So we drove a rental truck up to pick them up. We discovered that claw machines are way bigger than we thought they were. We needed 2 trucks. So we had to spend the night in Beaver Creek, Pennsylvania, and then someone else brought up a second truck, and then we drove them all back down. And then, as aforementioned, a pandemic happened. So that was going to be our big summer show like that year, but it didn't happen because it was literally January of 2020. So the plan was we were going to do it. It was going to be big. And then we just kept pushing it back. And finally, we did our first, like, jokingly, it's our adult gallery show, because all of our shows are mostly for children. So this was our adult one. And so the Pam Miller Downtown Arts Center offered to host us. And we built most of these things out in 3 months. And so there are 8 machines total. One of them is a basic standard claw machine, just so you have the contrast. And then I was involved in the making of 3 of them.
Right.
Yeah. I was involved in the making of 3 of them. The project is kind of mine. Like, I was one of the spearheaders for the project, and I got us to do our only other show, we took 3 of them to MagFest.
Right.
But the 3 specific ones I worked on were a sort of a sand garden machine called, I think the name, it's another R25th project, so it has a very long name that has the word Oasis in it. So that's what I call it. And the idea is that it's like those dust tabletop toys, more so than like an actual Zen garden, because like it's not a Zen garden, but it has a thing where there is a rake and you drag it around a bunch of sand in the ground on the bottom of the machine, which we thought was a good contrast to what a claw machine is for. We had another one called Project Theo, which I worked on with my partner, which is one where you talk to a machine and it spits out dreams. it's a variation on a project I built out with him during the pandemic for a Brooklyn show called. It's funny that I can't remember the name because the name is basically about aphasia. So it was a
Okay.
I was on a really powerful drug called Topamax at the beginning of the pandemic for migraines, and it completely robbed me of my words. So we built a game that was just about like not knowing how to speak and like losing your words, and so it mad-libbed itself. It's a really cool project. We showed it for a Brooklyn thing, and we built it out more for the show that we did for this year, and put it inside a claw machine. Took apart like a large teddy bear, gutted it, filled the whole thing with like fake guts. It's a lot to look at. It was also fun. It's fun to do because most of our projects have to be like really kid friendly.
Yeah.
So being able to do a project that's like, and here's a bunch of blood and guts like pouring out a machine, and it curses.
Yeah.
But like you can't do that at a gallery for children. And then the last one I worked on was with my boss and my former boss at Super Soul, which was one that shoots. It's a 2-player versus cabinet. So you pick up objects in the claw and you drop them in the tube, and then it shoots them across the machine at the opponent.
Right.
And I basically painted every cabinet.
Right.
I painted so much because like the idea was we wanted all these machines to stand on their own.
Yeah.
And they're gorgeous. We had a machine that did really cool effects with 3-dimensional sort of ghost in the machine kind of projects. And someone built one that was entirely virtual, and there was a lot of really cool projects in that room. And that was that ran. We talked about touring at other places, but they are very big.
Right.
Like I joked with a few people, but it is kind of true that you don't realize how large a claw machine is until you try to move one. And then suddenly it's so much bigger. Like they are 6 or 7 feet tall, depending on the machine. And they are anywhere from 3 to 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Because they're steel boxes.
In fun fairs, they have semi trucks. When they have like a park with UFO catchers, they will have semi trucks to move them. So of course there are several of them, but still, I mean, it's not like the kind of U-Haul you have to move like your place on Sunday. I mean, it's a semi truck. Yeah.
It was a funny thing though, because when we first moved them, we got there and Socks, who showed up to help me load them up onto the thing, was like, "Oh, did you get a lift gate?" And, no, we were just gonna roll them up the ramp,
right?
Which is what we ended up doing. So there's video on the Run Jump Dev YouTube channel. I've thoroughly documented that project to all get out, but there's video on that channel, and you can see where we drop those machines flat on their backs and yank them up the thing, and it works.
That survived. Okay.
We only broke one dolly in the process of things, but we didn't break any machines.
Yeah, well, that's the important bit.
That was the
surprising, but yeah.
And I keep shouting out MagFest, but they helped us unload them. The 3 that we brought, those guys unloaded those machines in like a minute. It was so fast.
Right.
Like we got there, and it had taken us like an hour to load them, because we're like Run Jump Dev, the crew I work with, we're like stereotypical gamer looking people, like really skinny, kind of sickly, just really small, and like not a strong one among us. And so like we're loading these machines, it takes us forever. We get to MagFest and they're all like logistics people, and they just like unload the entire thing in like 10 minutes. Oh my gosh, do you guys want to come to Kentucky? Unload these tomorrow.
And then, I mean, they are beautiful pieces, like, and it's lovely how well they've been done up. And I do love all the kind of the guts and viscera coming out of it, the way it's sort of like a kind of, you've taken something that is a claw machine. It's kind of like it's like a big grown up cross between a toy and a vending machine. And you've turned it into something that's kind of like a vat from Area 51 or something like that, which has a real kind of subversive thing to it. I mean, how do you, like, when you had the thing of, okay, we've got these claw machines, now let's make some games with them. How did you come up with the games?
Well, so some of them were individually pitched. So the Ghost in the Machine one, for example, and R25th did one that was I think it's 9 claw machines, mini claw machines inside of a claw machine. So it just spits into itself. Like it just, you do a claw machine inside of it, and then it goes to the next claw machine, it goes to the next claw machine. It's very cyclical. And that was one of the first ideas anyone had for them. And some of them are just natural like that. The Rock Garden one is another one that was just like, as someone immediately said, I think it was John Meister, who is the president, said, oh, what if we did one that's like a Zen garden? Because it just makes the most sense when you think of like that claw. And then some of them were just like, it just depended on what people saw when they looked at them. And they were just like, what would be the coolest thing? What do you not expect? Or what do you expect? Like when you see a machine, you want it to pick up things because that's cool. Like to pick things up is just really cool. And you just want to play around with them in a way, because they're also, I found out from doing this project that a lot of people weren't allowed to play them when they were kids because they're gambling.
Yeah,
I can say that firmly without equivocation. They are gambling. Like there's actually a screw. It's a physical screw, and you tighten it to make the game harder.
Really?
Yeah, like it's a physical object, and it affects the play. If you've ever seen a claw machine drop, and at the end they'll do this number, that's a turn. It's a physical part of the claw machine. I've joked before that I know too much about certain things. Now one of them is now claw machines. I did a lot of research on like the foundation of claw machines and where they come from. Like they were banned in the US for like 20 years because they're gambling.
They're gambling. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They're gambling and they're targeted at children. It makes sense. They also used to be like coal powered. There's a lot of really cool information about claw machines. It's one of the things I could probably go on about all day. But yeah, so it was just, some of it was like just looking into research and what they used to do and what they used to be like. And some of it's like just thinking about the stuff you have and the space you have. Like for Project Theo, I know that part of us was just like, if you think about it, a claw machine is a giant terrarium. It has these walls. So if you trap something inside of it, and specifically with that machine, we referred to it for a while as the Steak and Shake machine. It's a franchise in the US. And it had because one of the entire walls of it had been busted out. Like somebody had gone through it.
Okay.
And they had, so it was missing one of its entire sides. So that's why we picked it, because it kind of worked with the idea of something like crawling out of it.
Oh, yes.
Because the side was already gone. And we called it the Steak and Shake machine because somebody had been very industrious and had created a new window out of pieces of cardboard and like the vinyl sign from the outside of a Steak and Shake. And so like it worked. If it had been a claw machine, I would have played it. It would have been fine. But yeah, we pulled that all out, and then you had a claw machine, and it was a claw machine that was broken and busted, and things were, it just made sense to me looking at it that something was crawling out of the side.
Yeah,
because it's a foreign object. A claw machine with one of its glass pieces broken is an inherently foreign object. They're children's items. They're meant to be safe. You're not going to have raw glass in an object that's full of plush toys. And so that was the sort of thing with that. And then it was like other things were just natural fits off that. It's going to have black viscous goo, because of course it's going to have black viscous goo. It's going to be full of teddy bears because it's a claw machine.
Yeah.
It's got to be full of teddy bears. And then it was just levels of stuff after that. It has a horrifying little, like, a bunch of the toys we got, because we got them secondhand from charity shops. A bunch of the toys we had little voice boxes in them, and they're all still in there. And so there's one hanging out of the front with the compartment door, and if you press it, it like sings like Jesus Loves Me or something. I don't know. It's
That's so creepy.
I love the world building of it, because the way I design games, we don't normally get to build in a lot of world building, but using objects that kind of feel like they fell out of another reality gives you the ability to be like, yeah, and this is intentional.
Yes.
Even if no one's going to necessarily notice, it's still kind of fun.
Yeah. Wow. This is amazing. It's unfortunately we are starting to run towards the end of the show, so
Okay.
it does mean, but fortunately this does mean that although we are saying goodbye to talking about claw machines for a little while, we do get a chance to find out what you would create if given 5 random objects. So, Amanda, are you ready to have a go and see what the audience has got for you? Have you? I'm trying to think. Probably if you can't see our screen right now, maybe get a pen and write them down.
I have a pen and pad ready.
Fantastic, excellent.
And I will write them as usual, just to be safe.
Excellent. So, Amanda, are you ready?
I think so. Am I supposed to like live brainstorm this?
Yes.
Okay.
Ideally, yeah, because otherwise people will just look at us being silent for 5 minutes.
That would be better. I just wanted to make sure.
I don't know. It's kind of
that's
artistic, I think. You know,
Yeah,
make a thing of it. It was like, yeah, no.
We can mime. Yeah, I can try to dance. I don't know how to dance, which is the fun.
It becomes a game dev stream. Okay. I just wanted to double check. Okay.
Okie dokie. Right. So your 5 randomly assorted objects from the audience are: number 1, a rented box truck.
Sure.
Number 2, a copy of the C++ programming language by Screwstrip. Number 3, almost a Zen garden.
Oh.
Number 4, a sticky/stretchy hand toy.
Okay.
And number 5, this will be a familiar one, a hay baler.
Yes! Yes! It got through.
So that's a rented box truck, a copy of the C++ programming language, an almost Zen garden, a sticky, stretchy hand toy, and a hay baler. What are you thinking?
My first impulse is that I'm pretty sure that you can use C++ and Unity. So is it cheating? Is it cheating to just say it's a Unity game?
I think it's a very clever get out of jail free card.
It's probably C#. It's probably not even C++.
I think
Yeah,
Unreal,
it's C#.
Unreal you can do C++.
Yeah,
so...
but Unreal Engine has C++. So
yeah.
Here is your exit route. Yeah.
It's my cheat to work around. My first impulse is to panic about the obvious one is really to put a Zen garden inside a rented box truck.
Yep.
And then to use the sticky hand toy to get things out of the dirt.
So is the hand toy, is it like, how does stuff attach to the hand toy?
So a sticky hand toy is like one of those like things you get in almost like a gachapon machine.
Yeah.
And it's like a sticky and it's got like a long string on it. So I was thinking you do the horrifying task of attempting to dig through this Zen garden sand with a sticky hand toy.
Okay, I can picture
a rented
it.
box truck. So if we're looking classic box truck proportions, it's a 16-footer.
Yeah.
Because that's usually what people move stuff in. They make them bigger, they make them smaller, but 16 foot's about standard. So you do a 16-foot box truck and you fill the 16-foot box truck with sand. And then you hope that your insurance is really good. Because you just filled a 16-foot box truck with sand. And then I mean like layered, I should also say. It's a layered sand. And then you it's got to have hay bales in it. But those make sense because you've got to sit on the hay bales. Because otherwise you're just standing in the thing. And then you bury things throughout the thing, and somebody has to go through and get them out using a sticky hand toy, which would be, I need to clarify, absolutely awful.
Yeah, it's kind of sort of Sisyphean kind of thing, really. It's like
Yeah, no, it's definitely about the futility of the choices you've made to get to this point. It's got a lot of deep meanings. Just
yeah. Oh yeah, no, this is beautiful. This is very deep, very very artistic, very engaging. So I guess a follow-up question would
Yeah.
be like,
Uh-huh.
if we wanted to sell this to homes, how would you go about pitching it? You know, I'm thinking, because I'm thinking like families is a good audience for this. I think every child should have one this Christmas.
I mean, I usually make the argument that nothing I make can be sold to home. That's been my classic argument, because I used to get a lot of people at shows who'd be like, you should run a Kickstarter. I wouldn't back it, but you should run a Kickstarter. So usually my default is no, but I would actually say that you would rent out the box truck as is. And that would be a fun activity for parties.
Ooh.
So you wouldn't do it individual, you do it as like a business model. Like, so
nice.
Because if you hand a bunch of kids sticky hand toys and a sand pit, I mean, they're going to make their own thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I can design a game to go in it, but you're going to come back in an hour and they've declared a king and they've completely moved all the sand out of the box truck to who knows where.
So we need to budget for a lot of sand.
You need to budget for a lot of sand, which is going to be expensive. Honestly, the box truck is already that's setting you back quite a bit, and you have to sweep a box truck when you return them. So maybe it's less a rented box truck and more a stolen box truck.
Well, I mean, what if we rent it but we don't give it back for 100 years?
See, that's the stolen part.
We'll give it back eventually.
Well, technically, so if you actually rent a truck from U-Haul, you can call them and just tell them you're not taking it back that day.
Okay.
They're weirdly okay with it.
Right.
Because I did that for 30 days when I moved. You just call them every day and like, oh, are we getting it back? And you're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. Very laissez-faire attitude to have with like a $60,000 piece of equipment. But yeah, so I would say the rented aspect could be that you're renting it out for parties.
This is
for people to sit on hay bales and sticky hand things for some purpose involving Unity. I didn't actually connect those.
Maybe that's the treasure. Maybe
the treasure
book is the treasure.
It's just the C++ programming book. I'm gonna be honest, that sounds like a very bad prize, but
well, no, it's actually for the parents. It's educational.
I mean, it really does tap into the Sisyphean aspect of it, if you think about it, like because you do all this work and then the prize at the end is something you didn't want.
Yeah, the prize you want is more work.
It's a career. You've worked all this way just to start over again.
Yeah. Oh, this is brilliant.
I did draw. It's not a great.
I can picture it. It's very vivid.
It's not. It looks like a sandbox.
But
it's almost a Zen garden.
I believe, Tatiana, have you been making a picture of this behind
the
scenes?
So yeah, exactly. Not yet. During this game, I usually make a Photoshop like silly one just with the objects. But right now, like the first problem I had, it's my fault. It's the hail baler, like having a PNG image of that. And so can I see your picture again? So I have a reference, please.
Oh, I put hay bales in it. So
okay,
the
great.
box truck bottom, and then there's a bale of hay there and a bale of hay there.
Okay, I will put this in Photoshop, and yeah, I think this will be the image for tonight, honestly, because this is way too complicated.
Because I believe the hay baler is actually like it's a full
it's the machine. Yeah, it's the machine. It's not the just the bowl. Yeah.
Because the people who were doing hay baling at the state fair, they were doing it by hand, but usually it's like rolling them out. Like it's a farm equipment thing. I think I've seen them before because I live in the country.
I've seen them because I've been in Google Image and I've seen some.
They're very large. There's a lot of horse farms here, and they hay bale their horse farm stuff in between the seasons.
And apparently it's expensive, but I'm not surprised. Like farm equipment, that's
Farm equipment is always stupid expensive, and I'm always shocked to learn how much of it is like by Mercedes.
Right.
And stuff like that. You're like, oh, of course, that very large, expensive, like $500,000 machine. I'm like, well, of course, it's a Mercedes.
Oh, sometimes doesn't seem quite as cool driving it down the street.
No.
No, it's way cooler. I mean, in the streets, a hail baler, come on.
And
it's
anyone's
so much sexier.
And if anyone's driving really slow in front of you and you're like, no, you can just bail them up. Just turn them into a big hay bale and keep on driving.
I mean, probably. Farm equipment is dangerous.
Like real life Katamari Damacy. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
There's the actual game we should have made. It's a real life Katamari Damacy, but it's with a hay baler, and it just gets you arrested.
2 games in one. We've 2 games in one. It's a sequel. Multi-pack. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. We are running towards the end of the show now, but thank you very much for coming along. Before we head off, is there anything you'd like to tell the audience, or maybe where can they find out more about your work?
I mean, the best place to keep track of me is my website, as long as it's up, which is amandathrows.rocks. Still a coup that I got that name. That's a solid domain name. It's also really easy to say, which is better than the next part, which is my Twitter, which is @barelyconcealed. And that's usually where I update things. Right now, I just got a new job, and I've joked that I'm about to turn my Twitter account into me restoring a 1960s refrigerator, but I very well might turn my account into me restoring a 1960s refrigerator. So just be forewarned that my content might not be super hip, fun video games, but might be restoring a 1960s refrigerator.
So if you are into that, the link is in the chat right now.
if you want to see that, I'm not saying don't follow me, but that is a thing you will see.
I'm following, and I'm not disappointed. So
but I'm hoping to get back into it. I'm hopefully working on a project involving dementia and tactile and conductive thread. Hopefully, knock on wood. Been talking about it for a while, but I think I finally have a workshop set up where I can actually make it.
Okay. Wow. Teasing hard right now. All right.
Well, I'm going back to my narrative design roots, making a depressing game.
Yay!
But alternative controller.
Well, thanks so much, Amanda, for being here, for having been. Anyway, it was nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry for being such a chaotic guest.
Oh no, it was perfect. Yeah, and it was really lively. I wanted to give a shout out to the chat too, because today, it's obviously night for me, so tonight, day, whatever. It was really great. A lot of interactions from everyone, lots of love for many events people. Anyway, that was so cool. Thanks so much, everyone. And thank you, Alistair. Thank you very much.
So Beyond Screens takes place here on the IndieCade channel every Wednesday. So do keep an eye out. Keep on the IndieCade channel. Keep on watching every Wednesday. So as well as alternative controllers, we have playable theatre, escape rooms, and tabletop games, and much, much more. So thank you very much for coming along, and everybody have yourselves a fantastic night. See you later, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.